That's funny. We're up on YouTube and should be coming up on Facebook. And we're up on Zoom. There we go. Having such a great discussion with you, Jack, that I forgot there's this thing called going live. So here we are live. Hi, everybody. I'm Vince Mickens with All Things Aviation and Aerospace, and really looking forward to this conversation today with regard to EAA AirVenture at Oshkosh, Wisconsin, that's taking place starting Monday. As Jack Pelton and I were just talking about, it's going to really start Saturday when all of the thousands of aircraft start converging on this small airport in this small town that has become iconic over the decades and is in fact the largest aviation event in the world. So Jack Pelton, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Vince. Great to spend some time with you. It's been too long.
It has been. It's really great to spend time with you as well. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation about this show that many know about, particularly all of us in the aviation community. If you're an aviation buff, you have to know about your show. But if you're not, it is something that you want to put on your bucket list and make it to Oshkosh one day, because it is one heck of a show. And as we were talking pre-show, Jack, it's one of those shows that you could spend a week at and not see everything. It's just that big, and it's that exciting, and it's that engaging, and all of the above. And yes, I am that biased about it. So Jack Pelton is the chairman and CEO of the Experimental Aircraft Association, better known as EAA, for those of you who may not be familiar, and has been in that job two levels. You start, if I remember correctly, first you took on the role of chairman back in about 2012.
That's correct. Yeah, I was just a board position.
Right, and then you decided to take the helm, take the yoke, as we like to say, in 2015.
And actually, between 2013 and 15, I actually volunteered as the CEO as they were going through a management transition. So,
okay, so you were already kind of.
I was retired. I was retired and planned on being retired and just sitting on the board, but it turned out a little different.
Yeah, you were retired, and if I recall, you were flying one of my absolutely favorite aircraft, a Stearman, and in fact the PT-17, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So you're flying a Stearman and retired, and the next thing you know, you're taking on a rather big task, but and more importantly, what a history with this organization, going so far back. And, before we get into all the particulars about the show and everything, you have quite a storied history in aviation. And I wanted to kind of touch on that because your parents are both pilots. Probably start by talking about your dad and the things that he did and how that led to you flying. You started flying at a young age, and you have been immersed in aviation pretty much your entire life, probably from birth. So a lot of people don't get that chance to hear that much about you and your background. So Jack, how about telling us a little bit about how you got into it and about your parents and you and flying when you were young?
Certainly. And I have been in it my entire life. But the story comes from not a family that's involved in aviation. So I think that's something for other young people to think about. You don't have to come out of an aviation family to get involved in aviation. My dad served in World War II and was in the Army Air Corps and a pilot. And he, as a young boy, dreamed of flying in those days, as many of us have. Got his wings and did his time and married my mother, who it was his high school sweetheart. And while he was in the service back in 1943 and 44, she was, I think she referred to herself as a pilot's a widow. Well, while he was doing all of his training, she was at the base, and she decided to learn to fly. And in an interstate cadet down in Texas, and the two of them when he got out, he really wanted to be a commercial airline pilot. And she said, no, you're going to college. And she was a little bit worried about the commercial pilots in those days being freelance and
a little different ball game back then.
Yeah, totally different ball game. I'll make an honest man out of you. I'm gonna send you through school, which he became a dentist. But he always stuck to his passion of aviation and at the general aviation grassroots. So we had a little Cessna 140 as a family and spent most of our vacations and at air shows and aviation events. And he was a member of EAA Chapter 1 in Riverside, California. And that got all of us as a family at least exposed to aviation and everybody, my sister enjoying it. She said, I spent too many summers standing under the wing on a hot day drinking, I think she referred to it as orange soda of some sort. But I kind of knew early on with him taking me to the EA meetings and going and watching people restoring airplanes in the air shows that I wanted to find a way somehow, as I was growing up, to be involved in aviation. And it wasn't necessarily, I didn't think about being a commercial pilot as the only option. Matter of fact, I wasn't sure where that would go. And from my age, the timing of the Vietnam War, we had a surplus of pilots. So the likelihood of not being in the military and having enough hours to get on with an airline was going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to hear you say that because and the same thing for me in my early years of flying, I never really thought about flying professionally except military. I wanted to be a naval aviator, and my glasses kept that from happening. So, but other than that, I just loved being around airplanes and was the kid that rode his bike to the airport and things like that. You had a 140, which is a small trainer. What did you, was that what you learned in?
I did. It's a 140A, 90 horsepower, side-by-side seating, tail dragger, so very honest airplane. And I did that back when I was 17 and it actually had flown with my dad. My brothers and sisters and I, we all would go with him a lot. So flight training actually seemed a little bit easy because I had a lot of stick time sitting in the right seat.
Before you ever got started.
Yeah, before I ever got started.
Yeah. That's quite the history. But you bring up an early point that we were talking about also and wanted to emphasize, and that is there's a lot of different ways to get involved in aviation and become associated with it. If you're, I think about the fact that people going to an air show, and a lot of them that go are just enthusiasts. They're not necessarily in the industry or even thinking about getting in the industry. Of course, what we want is we want the young people to really consider all aspects of what aviation has to offer. With all of your experience because you've worked both here, you've worked in Germany, always in aviation. With all of your experience, what's the first thing that comes to mind to you about getting the next generation excited about the industry that we've always been excited about?
I think we have a lot of work to do to help them understand that there is many aspects of what we would call working in the industry means. And you could take if your passion is marketing, or if it's interior design, or if it's, many facets, you can apply that to aviation. So if we can get them interested in aviation as a channel, if you will, or a space, a market space, and then make sure that they understand that their personal passion of what skills they want to develop and fine tune can be applied. So it doesn't have to be a pure pilot track or a technician or mechanic track or aeronautical engineer. There's all of these. I worked for Douglas Aircraft for 21 years, and I was at Cessna and Dornier, and those companies are dependent on great marketing organizations, great financial organizations. Every aspect of all of the things you'd see in a big company. But we would all come to work with one kind of common. We're here because of the planes. We love being a part of aviation and seeing that first new airplane. I remember when the C-17 had its first flight. I mean, we had thousands of employees in Long Beach, out on the streets and the ramp to see the first flight of a brand new airplane, which is kind of, nowadays we look at a space shuttle launch as that, or a commercial service, but it's an effort of all these skills and talents to make something like that happen. And to be a part of it is really remarkable. So we've got a lot of work to do on the career pathing of where kids can go. You're going to hear an announcement at AirVenture On Monday, we were starting a program called Aero Educate.
Yes.
And that program, we have a well-established Young Eagles program where we've flown over 2.5 million young people free, people volunteering their time in airplanes to give young people a flight. And then the question is, okay, you gave them a flight, but now what? I mean, so you send them home and they've got everything, in front of them that that's trying to consume their time, whether it be school or sports or the internet, other groups and things that they participate in. So this is going to be a program for the young people, their parents, their school teachers, and companies that we're hooking into to help define career paths in a variety of careers. But it'll be online in front of them. It'll be a badging process. So there's kind of a constant accomplishment activity that occurs to get kids to stay involved after that first flight.
So that's interesting because EAA has always forever championed the idea of getting young people involved in flying, and you've had the successful Young Eagles program. How did Aero Educate come into play? How did you guys decide to do that?
We have struggled for the last many years of just the basic question, Vince, about, okay, they take the flight, what's next? I mean, you haven't done anything other than get them excited about one flight, but you're not engaged with them, you're not mentoring them, you're not continuing to show where this could lead and where it can go. And it's just taken us some time to figure out how to make that connection. And I think we all came to the realization that the way to make that connection is go to where they live. And I don't mean physically their address, but it's the iPad, the computer, the local museums, the
digital address.
Yeah, exactly. Their node, whatever their node is. And but using the assets of local museums and schools and mentors and chapters that we have, and how do we keep those in place so that you could keep a young person basically engaged and even letting them know locally what's going on in the aviation community. Did you know there's going to be a local air show somewhere? Or do you know a given museum is going to have a special exhibit of which they can get credit in Aero Educate for attending, and you kind of work your way through the process. But we've got some great companies that are supporting and helping us to develop the curriculum that goes with that. And it's not, AOPA has done a great job of the high school curriculum. And
absolutely,
we're not going to replicate that. We're looking at the younger kids to get them trying to decide before they go into high school where they want to go, what path they want to take.
A big piece of that too, what you just said, is in terms of parents and teachers. So educating is not only educating the kids about the opportunities, but educating the parents and getting the teachers more engaged to realize what those opportunities are to share with those kids. Because I think one of the challenges has been, and I don't want to speak totally out of turn, but you guys get them up flying, and then, as you said, what happens after that? The kid, the parents are excited that the kid got to go flying, but they don't really know what to do next.
Right.
They don't know what are the next steps. And so it's like it was a great moment, and that was it.
You nailed the problem statement that we're trying to work on, which is kind of getting that whole ecosystem involved with the kid. And the parents are a big piece of it because they got to be encouraging and supportive or it's going to go nowhere. But they're not involved in aviation. So you got the basic, just fundamental grassroots education to the parents of where this can go, what your child can think about from a career standpoint or education standpoint, what opportunities are out there, and then getting companies to help show them that that's what companies are looking for down the road. Here are some of the career opportunities. So we've even said we have what we call an Eagles flight program. We've got to fly more of the parents, and we've got to fly more of the teachers.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, which is a fantastic idea. Let's give everybody the big picture. Tell us what we're expecting as things get underway for AirVenture in terms of the number of airplanes coming in, the thousands of people that are going to be either camping under a wing, in a tent, in a motorhome, et cetera. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, certainly. And I think you nailed it up front in just saying if you come for a day, you really just scratch the surface. But we encourage you, come for the day to see what it's about. And I think you'll say, I need to come back and spend more time. The event has so many moving pieces to it. Over 10,000 airplanes fly into the event. And you get to see in one location everything from historic warbirds to vintage aircraft to home builts to just pretty much anything that's up in the air is there on the grounds. Many of the people that fly in are actually camping under the wing. We have a massive campground that over 40,000 people come in tents and trailers and RVs.
That's 40,000, right?
40,000, yeah.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people in a town that only has 60,000 people. So
yeah, you had mentioned that. I couldn't even wrap my head around that. I'm like, okay, 40,000. That's just scratching the surface. Because you guys expect over the week how many people?
Well, in 2019 we had 640,000 people
over a week's period.
Over a week's period, and wow. We expect something similar that this year. But people ask, okay, so there's a lot of airplanes on the ground, and there's a great air show that happens every afternoon. But the big piece that we hope people will gravitate toward is, and this is where you find yourself needing more time. We have forums, we have speaker series, we have hands-on workshops, we have KidVenture for younger kids to do hands-on learning, build a rib for an airplane or carve a prop or learn how the braking system works. And out of that, it's kind of a reward system also. So there's a lot of educational pieces of it. And in the forums, there's almost every topic. If you were there and you were thinking about learning to fly, there would be speakers giving seminars on that. If you're curious about, the aviation industry, there's forums on that. There's forums on weather. There's forums on specific airplane types, along with over 800 exhibits that are highlighting, aviation equipment, apparel, hardware, headsets, avionics, and almost every airplane manufacturer in the GA space that's out there has got an exhibit, from home builds to business jets. So it's one location, as you said, the largest aviation event in the world.
Yeah, and you guys also, the other thing you have airplane rides and some classic aircraft. I think you have the tri-motor, the Ford tri-motor.
That's correct.
And then the B-25, is that giving rides this year?
That is. The B-25 is giving rides, and
Bell Helicopter.
Bell Helicopter gives the Bell 47.
I call it the Mash Copter.
Yeah, that's what it is. Bell 47. There's a couple of them, and they give rides over the ground, so you can kind of see the expansiveness of what's going on. The Doc B-29 from Wichita is going to be at the local airport giving rides also, which is very historical airplane. So a lot to see and do, a lot of opportunities to, if you have interests and you have high curiosity, it's the place to go get those answers that you're looking for. And this
Absolutely.
year,
go ahead.
This year, 18 years and younger, get in free. So
I saw that. I thought that was pretty remarkable, actually, to allow for that. That's really going to help encourage people to bring their kids, or for kids to come on their own and experience this event.
And that's due to Boeing underwriting that. Boeing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Boeing stepped up and said, we got to help you work on getting young people out here and help families be able to, give them the chance to, hey, here's an opportunity to bring your kid and let them experience what this is about.
Well, that brings me to, there's so much I want to cover in the time we have, but that brings me to something. These aviation companies are very willing to support and underwrite and help get kids involved in the industry, including with scholarship programs with you guys and with the other aviation associations and that type of thing. And I sometimes wonder if the parents and the kids realize that these opportunities are right there in front of them.
They probably don't. But if you think about, these aerospace companies are looking at the young people who are there as their future employees.
Right.
If it's all about recruitment of top talent, and if they know a young person has an interest in aviation, they want to help cultivate it, because they don't want to lose them in their high school or college years to some other interest, because that's the workforce of tomorrow. And it's a big deal for these companies to be able to fuel the future, if you will, with these young potential employees. Yeah,
and touching on that workforce for tomorrow and going back to something we were talking about earlier. So, you had the privilege of actually building an aircraft with your dad, right?
I did, yeah.
So I tinkered under the hood, car hood with mine, but I would love to have been able to, actually build an experimental aircraft with my father. Would have been kind of a cool experience. Tell us about that and what that was like, and just what that means, because that's kind of the core of EAA.
It is, and it really came about as to how the experimental amateur home built movement evolved. And so he was a tinkerer, and nothing that broke at home he was always going to take the first shot at trying to fix it, even if it ended up having to call an electrician or a plumber and tinkering on cars. And we would do that together, my brothers and my dad. And finally, the experimental amateur built kits started to become kits, not just scratch built airplanes. And it became, we started feeling we built models as kids, radio controlled airplanes and rubber powered ones. And it got to be where we're saying, they've got the materials and the instructions. We can do this. This is something we can kind of commit to as a good bonding session for the two of us to,
right,
in the garage work on this. And we committed to a certain evening that we would spend together on it. And it worked out great. And we built an airplane that flew. And about that time, I was getting into starting my career. I was heading into my 20s and in a family. And it was one of those, I'll always reflect on that time with my dad as being very special, as you can only imagine, because
sure,
I look back where I am now, and his encouraging hand of being there, saying, "You can do this, kid," and I'll keep you out of trouble. That was probably his real motivation was. We'll
exactly. Keep you busy, right?
Exactly.
That's all parents. That's all our goal.
Yeah.
Along those lines too, in terms of the working on the aircraft and everything, one of the things that I like to point out is that if you're into things like auto mechanics or whatever the case, that can easily transfer to doing something in the aviation industry, whether it's working on turbine engines or even reciprocating engines, or whatever the case may be, or working on avionics if you've got that electronic bug and you're really good with it and things like that. And just the beat goes on, or if you're just good with computers, and nowadays if you're good with video games, there are opportunities for you in aviation to do things with the remote stuff. By the way, you guys have, we talking about RC radio control models, you actually have an RC section or field there at the show.
Yeah, we do. And in the evenings, we let kids come out, and they have what they call a buddy box, and they can actually get airplanes up to fly. We have the American Modeling Association. We have a kind of a co-marketing agreement with them. And we've done, through our chapters, we've got programs where chapters can get a complete RC kit, everything you need in there, from glue to tools to radios. And we call them youth chapter builds. And we encourage chapters to get the young kids out, again, working with their hands, working with reading blueprints, and then building something that actually flies. And we just think that that's what EA was founded on. It was putting your mind and your hands together to work, and
hands-on,
yeah, that you can do things. Now we're taking that to a new level, and I don't think we talked about this earlier, Vince, but we broke ground, and we will have finished before next AirVenture our new addition to our museum, which is a 30,000 square foot, 2-story, extremely modern facility that one floor is nothing but STEM hands-on aviation learning labs that we have. And it's really playing off KidVenture, which has been one of probably our highlight programs during AirVenture. We get like 5,000 kids that go through this KidVenture, which KidVenture is you go from station to station and learn about electronics, but it's all geared for young kids as to how they learn. It's hands-on, it's simplified, and it's very rewarding because you watch them learn the principles. We said, why aren't we doing this year round? Why is that something we don't have the capability to kind of replicate that year round? So that's one of the floors, is to do that year round. And we hope to bring in kids, and we have a place for them to stay from all over the United States, and we hope to create scholarships for that. And then the first floor is for flight training. It's the training flight proficiency center, which we also have at AirVenture, working almost day and night, where we have 13 simulators set up on the grounds with CFIs. So you can come in and sit down and go through a 1 hour flight scenario to keep your skills brushed up. And
nice. What kind of simulators do you guys have in there?
we have Redbirds.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a
famous Redbird.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really great. That's great that you have that expansion. And are the one for STEM, is that open yet or about to?
Both of them will open at the same time, and we're looking at the June time frame of next year. But the steel is up, the construction's going right now. You'll be able to see it when you're here.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure you're looking forward to displaying that or putting that on display next year.
We certainly are.
Oshkosh. Yeah. You're talking about the different programs that you have. Like, I was going to ask about the museum, so you got me on that one. But you have a few other programs that you guys have going on for your members and particularly for youth. Is there any other ones that you wanted to expand on a bit?
Well, I think we really encourage our members to get involved in chapters at the local level, because that we do feed those chapters with lots of programming, whether it be youth programs or adult programs. I talked about the Build to Fly. We have one that a module that a chapter can throw an event to kind of break down the barriers of how do you go learn to fly? What's the process of if I want to get my pilot's license? And then we have some other ones on helping to encourage chapters to have their members to find ways to create flying clubs. And we've got all that material free for them to go, all the legal aspects of doing that. And the goal there is just to see if we can reduce the barriers of the cost piece of aviation. And flying clubs are a great way if you get a good training airplane, but you've got 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys that split the ownership costs on it. It can really help get you in the door and keep you flying. I know.
Absolutely.
I know when I learned to fly, if I hadn't had a flying club, we had one at Douglas Aircraft, but there was one on the field in Long Beach where I grew up. It would have been tough, when you're young and you're married and you're having kids and you've got cost issues and things that you're trying to balance. That was a significant reduced price and ability to keep me in the game.
Yeah, I was going to just ask, what do you advise to a lot of the families and kids that really want to do more in aviation, but cost is prohibitive, or it's a turnoff? It's the first thing that they go, oh God, can't afford that, even though there's an interest. I know you guys do a lot of things we've been talking about. Just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's always a tough discussion, and I'm a parent and a grandparent, and I know how hard that is, and we try to show them the different ways you can help mitigate the cost with there are so many scholarship programs that are out there. We through our chapters, we have the James Ray Foundation Young Eagle Scholarship Program, which is a young person, if they get a sponsor at the chapter, can be awarded a scholarship of $10,000, which can get you your private pilot's license. And it's pretty much a full ride, if you will. And we give out about 100 of them a year. So there's a lot of them out there. Our other associations have very similar programs. So we try to point and direct people as to what are some of the things you can do to offset these costs and find ways to not make it a personal burden on the family. And they're not loans; they're true scholarships. Yeah,
I'm going to digress for a little bit. Paul Poperezny started this whole thing way back when. As a matter of fact, it's been how many years now?
1953 is when he founded or started the EAA, the experimental amateur home built movement, which he was so far ahead of his time when he came up with pushing that to get it as a regulatory approved way of people being able to build and fly their own airplanes in the same airspace as everybody else. And I think, Vince, it's a statistic I knew about but never liked to talk about when I was running Cessna. Right now, today, there are more home-built airplanes being registered on the federal registry, then all of the Part 23 on an annual basis, then all of the Part 23 Cessna, Beechcraft, Husky, Piper, you name them, put them together versus the kit movement that we have today far exceeds the Part 23.
That's
and
amazing.
So what, and my point there is not the us versus them. It's without that, I don't know where general aviation would have been, because that's been a multiplier that then allows FBOs to sell fuel and mechanics to be able to do annuals and repair planes and, you know, all that infrastructure and jobs
Right.
that go with it. So thank you, Paul, for having created an entire segment, aviation segment, that's propped us all up.
Well, quite the visionary. Here he is in this small town in the middle of Wisconsin, and the next thing you know, this is, I mean, I'm no youngster, and when I was a teenager, I knew about Oshkosh, you know, because of my interest in aviation, and to see it grow over the years, and then see Tom take it over and continue, and it's had quite the legacy that continues to grow and really be there for everybody that's interested in it. I wanted to keep on track about making sure that we discuss all of the things that you guys have there. But one of the things that I know I've seen some traffic about, and that is what kind of safety protocols you have in place in reference to having this first pre-pandemic event. And with the things that have been going on lately, where there's some concerns about a resurgence, et cetera, and so forth. How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, we started the journey. We canceled 2020, and then we started, looking at what would it take in 2021. And it wasn't really until the beginning of this year that we started seeing signs of it possibly being achievable. And kind of the key ingredients of it was, this event only occurs because we have 5,000 supportive volunteers that really run the darn thing. And without those volunteers involved, it couldn't happen. And so we were pulsing the volunteer community to see how comfortable they were with the direction of where the pandemic was going to. Were they seeing enough relief that they felt, being at an outdoor event and even some indoor venues that they would participate. Same with the exhibitors, and then same with the community. We worked really hard in the state and at the local level with the health departments and the various hospitals on weekly meetings to look at, okay, what should the protocols be? So it started out, looking at early on, well, is it going to be a mask required event? Are we going to have to shut down all indoor events? And we moved to a place that had the full support of the health authorities to let's try to reduce the numbers of large indoor activities. So we looked at, we worked with Ford, who sponsors our concert on Monday, and said that's can be, depending on who's performing, a large gathering of shoulder to shoulder people right in one location. We canceled that. All of our indoor banquets that had thousands of 1,000 people, and we either eliminated them or we kept one that we reduced it to just over 400 and some odd people. We started looking at our forums and our workshops about spreading people out. Our air show, we split the flight line so that there's two show centers. So there's a natural people will spread out more than they would normally, because you don't have to be in one location to be in, quote, show center. There'll actually be a north and the south. We hired Janiking, which is one of the national, probably best known sanitization and disinfecting company, to kind of look at our facility and come on board. And we're spending a lot of money on cleaning and sanitization and disinfecting. And they're going to be all over the place, making sure that touch points and other things are clear and clean. We're at a mask is not mandatory, but we certainly respect everybody's own personal choices on their comfort level. Some people probably won't come if they don't feel comfortable, and I certainly understand that. And we're encouraging everybody to respect those who feel they need to wear masks or not wear masks.
Right.
And so we think we've been in a position where the Delta variant that's out there today, what they're saying is the unvaccinated folks are at a higher risk on that right now. I think we're in pretty good shape. I mean, I feel that we can, with most of this being outside and spread out, and that the exhibits that are in hangars, we spread that. We took and created a whole separate area for exhibits so that we could put 30% less exhibits in a hall and made wider aisles and wider areas and partitions between them, just to prevent the congestion. I believe people will use their own judgment. They'll look in a hangar, and if it's overcrowded at that hour, they're uncomfortable about that, then they won't go in, which is the right decision for them.
Right.
And so, I think camping early on in the pandemic was an acceptable place to be. The CDC always said, being in a trailer, you're self-contained, and
right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so we feel pretty good that we've done, and we will continue to stick to the protocols that we put in place. A lot of the corporate parties that would occur at their booths, were limiting the size of those. A lot of people are saying, can't you ease up now? No, we're sticking with what we agreed to with the health departments early on. And let's just have a good event this year that may be a little different in that regard, and let the world get back to normal.
Sure. And what's important is, it's clear from what you just said, you guys have put a lot of thought and a lot of planning into trying to make this as safe, but still as much of a fun event as possible. And so now it's kind of up to the attendees to help bring it all together and make it work.
It is. And we know, because of the restrictions, like our international crowd's going to be down significantly. I mean, there's a lot of countries that have just said we can't get there. It's the protocols getting back and being tested and all that are too difficult. So that helps some people understand it's just not an open. Right now, we're still not in a position where everything's wide open and people can come in. And Canada still has only essential people can come across the border through. I think it doesn't open up until after August.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, there's no way I can have a pilot like you on a webcast like this and not talk a little bit about some stuff that will be appealing to aspiring aviators and current aviators like myself. I just wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things about flying, because I noticed that one of the things EAA does is suggest options as to what level of flying you want to do, whether it's a light sport type of flying or full private, et cetera, and so forth. And I just wanted to hear from you, a guy that has all those ratings and has flown a little bit of everything over many years, what your perspective is as the boss there at EAA about what young aviators can be thinking about.
At the event, they'll get a chance to kind of see all those aspects. So we have our light sport, ultralight end of the field that's active, that they can go out and see what that is, which is a very, very low cost entry point. EA was very involved in creating the light sport category of airplanes, which is another, I think, a very solid way to get into aviation and get a sport pilot rating first, and then move up to your private pilot rating. You'll see, if your question is more about what we'll actually see flying while we're here, you'll see all of that. It'll be in the air, in our air show, and during the day doing demonstrations. And I think the fun part about EA is that you can go get your questions answered. So I really encourage young people, that curiosity you have, make sure you come here and don't waste the opportunity of asking a million questions, because this will be the spot you'll get them answered, and you can get differing opinions too, which allow you to then to kind of put it together and figure out which way you want to go. And it will all be here to do that. And we actually have in the EA Center area, we have a Learn to Fly Center, and it will be a great place for young people to go and talk to our support volunteers and people who can help guide you through how do we want to create that journey for you? What are you interested in? What's your, you got is sport pilot going to be the great place for you to start for what's available in your area and costs and all those other things, and it'll be able to show you how you go from that to private and on up to the professional pilot stuff. So we've got that there as a very specific resource for you at the EA Learn to Fly booth.
Yeah, and you have a lot of different levels of pilots that come through, whether it's some that have just started their, maybe professional flying career, to guys that are almost older than the airplanes that are there on the field. So I'm sure somebody's going to get me for that. But anyhow, I think it's great. I think I would like your suggestion of letting the curiosity flow and ask a lot of questions, because pilots are very ready to talk and share their thoughts and their experiences and their advice on which way to move forward. So that's kind of neat. I'm glad you brought up the learning center, because that's a great thing that you have there too, amongst all of the other things. Are there any other programs in particular that you wanted to emphasize? And again, there are things like you have two theaters, right, that are for people to watch aviation centric shows, movies, etc.
We do. In the evenings, we have the Ford Fly-In Theater, which is a very large screen outdoor venue where you just bring a chair or a blanket on the grass, and each night there's a different aviation themed movie that occurs. And then we have Theater in the Woods, which really is more of it's a live in-person discussions that take place, and they're programmed out and themed. We have many of the original officers in commanding officers from Desert Storm that will be doing a live panel discussion and question and answer with the audience on that experience, because it's the 30th anniversary of it. We'll have Space Night, where we'll have folks that are involved in space in various forms and fashion, having a panel discussion and telling stories, but again, opening it up to the audience for questions and answer. There's a Women in Aviation Day, which is on Wednesday, which is a great resource for women to connect with other women to understand kind of their journey and what was it like, and what would you recommend, and how do I go about it, as support groups, and some incredibly accomplished women who have stories to tell that can help a young woman realize they can achieve their dreams just like they have.
Yeah.
So a lot of that takes place during the week.
How big of a deal is space? You brought up space exploration, with the things that have happened recently with Richard Branson,
Mhm.
and then yesterday with Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos, and this whole thing of taking space to another level. Not to mention what's happened over the last year or so with SpaceX, back into the thing of taking people to the International Space Station, and eventually further, and things like that. How much of that do you hear buzz about there in reference to EAA?
Jeff Bezos brought the Blue Origin launch rocket. I think it's been about 5 years ago, and had it on display in our plaza. And
Really?
so, yeah, we were all talking about it. He had the capsule on the ground. I actually got to sit in it,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was open to the public to go in it. And so there's been a lot of buzz of, gosh, remember when he was here and when he was talking about it, and we're all like, wow, I wonder if that'll ever happen. And
Right.
this week it actually happened. And I think, the big excitement about that is, again, for kids, it's another interesting avenue. I grew up as an Apollo kid, and with the Kennedys' challenge to get to the moon, and they built the Apollo in the city I lived in, and just was fascinated with, oh my goodness, somebody's going into space to another planet. And
Right.
now we kind of took the shuttle for granted, and here we go again. We're talking Mars. We're talking a lot of things, and young people that are very innovative and entrepreneurial, and that's another panel, or another path, is this whole space, and where is it going, and how commercialized is it going to get? And they need software people. They need uh, just lots of varying skills to make that happen. I think it's exciting, because I think it's another kind of jump start to get us all back into the aerospace side of aviation. And I think kids will see also this coming week that, things like electric propulsion, and, how are we looking
Yes.
at planes in the future as to what's going to power them, clean energy, sustainable fuels, all of that stuff that they're growing up with right in front of them, whether it be, the incredible automation of cars and the devices that we all now use and live. How is that going to get applied to aviation and aerospace? So a lot of that will be showcased this week.
Well, and you guys are the perfect place for it because I think there's a definite tie-in between experimental aircraft, kit planes, et cetera, the building of them, the workshops that you guys have in so many different aspects of building an airplane, and building a spaceship, building building the next rocket or the next vehicle to go into space and things like that. There's a synergy there to me
There
that
is.
actually makes a whole lot of sense. And so adds just for that, even going into the model rocketry. I mean, I built rockets when I was a kid, some successful, some not so successful. But but you as a kid, you learn a lot just with that involvement, and I can only imagine what young people would learn during Oshkosh AirVenture in terms of going to these workshops and, as you just mentioned, looking at different kinds of technology or things like that. I think there's a huge synergy there.
There is. Now, were you an Estes model rocket builder?
Yes, I was.
So was I. I was too. But the problem I had in California is you couldn't get the engines without a license.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I used
The
to
problem
build.
I had was second stage, but that's a story in itself.
So
That you had a thing where it had to pop your parachute.
right.
But if it didn't pop it in time, it would melt your parachute and then come down and destroy itself.
That
Yeah.
sounds like a man with some experience there talking.
Yeah,
About.
I've had a little bit. We used to, so back then, we used to have the 6-volt battery, and that was what you used to ignite.
Yep.
But my dad was like, we're not going to keep buying batteries for this. We'll just put the car, pull it up to the park, run some long cables, and ignite it like that. And of course, my mom thought we were a little crazy, but I had a ball. So the biggest one I built was the Apollo.
Oh,
Yeah, I did the
that's
Apollo 2-stage.
that was a complicated one.
It was a complicated one. First one I blew up. Second one, it launched. So, yeah.
When you're talking about the technology, the other segment is this whole UAS market that's
Yes.
growing, and we'll have some things on display around that. And we could talk for hours on whether we think it'll be successful or not, or where it's going, or is it going to be packages or people, or who knows? But what I do really think is going to be exciting is the technology that gets developed out of that probably can be used in home builds first, and then eventually put into general aviation airplanes. When you look at a lot of the flight control systems and envelope protection, and they're just spending so much money on that I hope will be the beneficiaries of whatever comes out of that will roll into our segments.
Yeah, and that leads back to the up and coming generation because of their experience with video games and the like, and even the fact that Microsoft brought back their simulator. All of these things tie together and come into play.
They do.
And in terms of the future, you and I may need some instruction from our kids on it, but or in your case, grandkids. But yeah, it is. It's an exciting thing. We have about 10 minutes left, and one of the things I wanted to make sure I touched on. So I think it's kind of neat that your wife is also a pilot, and she has flown. Does she still fly the Skycatcher?
She has the Skycatcher, and it's going to leave the fleet. She has a policy that it's one in and one out of our hangars as far as airplanes, and so
she controls the purse. I got you.
Yeah, and so it's kind of it's lived its course, and she did that as a. I think it only happened because, again, the technology and simplicity of the glass panels and all of the things in the airplane attracted her to saying, I think I could do this. This doesn't look. I've been watching as I fly with you in our Cessna 206 with a similar avionics system. I think I can grasp the concepts of how that all works, and so it was kind of an interesting journey for her, and again, it's that it translates very well. So she went from watching, but she said, I can't push the 206 in and out of the hangar. I mean, the thing's a beast compared to, she's 5'2", and she said,
oh, wow.
But here's this other airplane that has the look and feel of it, and I feel very comfortable on that. And she wanted, she wasn't really looking to be going for flying by herself for pancake breakfast as much as understanding. She worked in the aviation industry her whole career. She was with Rockwell, she was with Continental Airlines, and I met her at Douglas.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so she, as a flying partner, was like, I want to know as much. And I want, if anything happens to you, I want to be, able to help. And she just loves it. I mean, she's a volunteer at EA. So
Awesome. You touched on something I want to jump to real quick, and that was the technology now. So have you had a chance to experience the Garmin Autoland system?
I haven't flown that. I've been invited to fly the test, to go up and see the test. And I'm dying to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I haven't either, but Tom Haynes at AOPA, he had written up about it when he had the opportunity. And of course, I thought the thing that stood out to me the most is he said he had to sit on his hands because he kept wanting to. He had to keep his feet off the pedals and sit on his hands because he kept wanting to take control of the aircraft. And the Garmin Autoland system had it under control. And the neat sidebar to that is it actually talks to the passengers and tells them what it's doing and what the next thing is going to be, and to just, relax and hang in there. So this is the machine telling you, it's okay, I got this. I'm going to pick an airport and I'm going to land and you'll be fine. That it just doesn't get much better than that.
No, it really doesn't. And I think they also, don't they flash a warning? I mean, as a reminder, don't touch anything, don't touch anything.
Yeah, something like that. So I thought that was neat. I was talking about your wife flying, and so both of you are pilots. I don't believe any of your kids are pilots, right?
No, they're not.
Yeah.
It's one of those. They'll be at AirVenture. They love aviation.
Right.
It was kind of one of those, just the way we raised them, as far as their work for what they have, and there wasn't going to be any real handouts on that. But there'd be help. I mean, I can work with my son and daughter on that. And they said, we're not sure we would stay with it and spend the money to stay current. And part of that, I mean, those were just family discussions around what my dad recommended to me, and why my brothers and sisters didn't become pilots. And he said, if you aren't going to commit to flying at least 50 hours a year, you aren't going to be safe. So, you got to make a decision. If this is what you're going to do, you got to stick with it and budget the money to be able to continue to do it. I may have, now that he's gone, I may have, as a father, a little differing opinion, which is, once you get that license, you have it for life. If life gets in the way and you got to step out of aviation,
you can always get current again.
You can go to a rusty pilot seminar and start back in it. And it's like the skill set's like riding a bike, and you just have to get up to speed on the navigation and charts.
And whatever the updated regulations are, et cetera, and so forth. What about grandkids? You have grandkids. Are any of them? Because I'm wondering if it skipped a generation and maybe they're showing more of an interest.
I absolutely, I think it does, because we have 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and our youngest grandson, my wife keeps saying that he's just wanting to become your favorite, because he says, I'm going to be a test pilot. It's like, you're 4 years old. You don't even know what a test pilot is. But I'm going to encourage you and support you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other ones are just fascinated by it. And they're kind of taking that early, they're 10 and 12 or 13. And, they like coming to the air shows and asking the questions and understanding what it's all about. So
did that help give you perspective, in terms of your kids and then grandkids, in terms of what you do for EAA, and when you guys are looking at like the program you've just developed, the Educate program, and things like that, give you perspective on it to help just kind of put it all into perspective?
It really does. I mean, I try to get and understand and be current in their world and what their lives are like, and understand their technology expectations, their time expectations. And, it brings me to we're still got so many opportunities to do more with simulation and things they can be doing at home, as opposed to going out to an airport, and efficiencies, because they don't like to waste time. I mean,
right.
They like to get into things and participate heavily and then go off to the next thing. Yeah. But it gives me also an understanding of what you're competing against. I mean, because parents are trying to keep them busy, to keep them out of trouble, and you got school requirements and all that other stuff. So
And they take technology to them. For us, technology was always exciting when we were growing up because it was so new. Now technology there's so much of it that kids, it's nothing for kids about an iPad and an iPhone and simulators and blah. They just, it's like, oh, okay, this is what we do.
I think, is that a Redbird J behind you?
No, it's not. It is a simulator, but it's gosh, what is it called? I forgot the name of it, but yeah, it's not a Redbird.
But I have a little simulator, and I could put my grandsons in front of it with no instructions, and they
start flying.
Yeah,
yeah. It's a whole nother thing. Exactly. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share any other last minute advice or thoughts with regard to this great and exciting show you have coming up called EAA AirVenture Oshkosh 2021.
I really, if you can get a chance to get out here, I can assure you it's well worth the journey. I think you will walk away with a whole new and different appreciation. It's hard to explain what it's like, as Vince can tell you. You have to go there because it's sensory overload. There is so much of everything. It's overwhelming, and that's what makes it to where you want to keep coming back. But if you have interest in aviation, you got to spend some. Come see it, and if you can't this year, certainly work on how you can do it in the future. And we're ready for you. It's going to be a great week, and a lot of great air show activity, a lot of fireworks in the evening, and we're going to have a lot of history told and captured, and it will be another memorable week.
Yeah, I almost forgot. What are some of the highlights of the air shows that are going to be the daily shows that you're looking forward to this year?
One of the ones I'm looking forward to towards the end of the week is a reenactment of various in celebration of the end of World War II. Some of the various conflicts had very unique airplanes involved in the different theaters. And so we're pairing up some of those unique airplanes and flying them together in representing some of the different battles and attacks. And so it's a great assortment of everything that was in the air in World War II in both the Pacific and in Europe. We have AVSOC, which is the Special Forces of the Air Force. They're going to come in and doing demonstrations of jumping out of planes and how they take control of a field and
awesome
V-22s coming and going, which are for a kid that's kind of like the not Terminator. What's that toy that contorts?
Don't ask me. I have no idea.
We've got
but I hear you.
Some displays representing humanitarian flight. So we'll have some general aviation and some commercial humanitarian flight displays where you can see how from a deployment to get a hospital into an area that's been damaged or hurricanes or whatever it may be, and how that works, or general humanitarian of some of these airplanes that have the capabilities to go out and helping people in areas where they need it. Will be very, very interesting. The Goodyear blimp's going to be flying around.
Yeah, I'm still yet to get a blimp ride. I got to work on that.
Yeah.
But very much looking forward to this event. Always excited about it, especially after a year off from it. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Brigadier General Charles McGee, the Tuskegee Airman, retired Air Force, icon, is coming. He is, as he puts it, 101 and 7 months. So he will be 102 December 7th. But he's coming with some of his family. And one of the great things that's going to be great for that trip is his great grandson is also coming, who is very much into all things aviation and aerospace. No pun intended. And then another young man that was at his 100th that did a presentation, who's now 13 and coming in or 14. 13 or 14. Anyhow, young man coming in as well. So it's going to be kind of neat to have them experience Oshkosh for the first time and kind of represent in terms of addressing the things that we talked about and seeing all that's going to be at the event and what it offers for their future and things like that. Jack, it has been a true pleasure chatting with you about everything and hearing your perspective on all that you guys are doing. EAA is a great organization started by the Popereznys and has been continued to make an impact that's a very positive one for our industry. So thank you so much for being a part of this show today.
Well, thank you, Vince. And it's, we always run into each other at every aviation event. It just seems like we haven't had any in so long. It's like, where's Vince been?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. We were talking about how small the industry can be, and that we haven't seen each other, any of us, for quite some time. So looking forward to that. It'll be a kind of reunion for us.
It certainly will.
That are going to make it out. So good luck with everything with AirVenture. Hope everything goes well, and I hope you have that 600,000 or 700,000 people again for the week. It'll be really neat to see that happen.
Well, thank you, and look forward to seeing you.
All right, we'll see you. See you on Sunday.